It landed in my inbox, uninvited. A simple auto-forward from the shared account Clara and I had kept for years, for promotions, tickets, medical reminders. It was a flight confirmation, a detail that shouldn't have startled anyone, except Clara hadn't said a word to me about traveling. And it was a round-trip flight for two people, destination, Cartagena. I read the email twice. Flights, hotel, even a welcome package in the room with fruit and wine. And the worst part? The names. Hers and a man I didn't know. Manuel Diaz. Not a friend, not a cousin, not someone with a familiar last name. He was, in essence, the gaping wound from which my trust bled dry. I said nothing to her that night. She came home from the office at 8, following the same old routine: a kiss on the cheek, a shower, pajamas, a light dinner. She asked if I'd bought coffee. I nodded. She asked if I'd turned off the gas. I said yes. Nothing in her voice, in the way she moved, revealed the truth. And that's what hurt the most: that she could live two lives at the same time with such surgical precision. I went to bed late. I waited until she was asleep and started digging. Manuel Diaz was real. He existed. A private Instagram account, but with a profile picture showing him on a motorcycle, helmet in hand, wearing a textbook smile. I checked previous emails, bank statements, the calendar on her phone. It all fit. They had been planning this for weeks. The next day, I pretended I had an early meeting and left before she did. I holed up in a coffee shop, my laptop open, but my mind blank. I bought a ticket for the same flight. There were only 5 seats left. I chose 7B. She was in 7A. I wanted to be there, to see her, to have her beside me for the entire trip. Not to scream at her, not to demand explanations. No, I wanted her to know that I had found her out, and that no cheap excuse was going to save her. That the hell she had started, she was going to live through with me, minute by minute, at 30,000 feet. The night before the flight, we slept in the same bed. She gave me a kiss before turning to her side, just like so many times before. I had to restrain myself from tearing the sheets off her and screaming that I knew everything. But no, patience can be a slow, perfect poison. I got up at dawn. She was already gone. She'd left early. According to the text she left me, she had to go straight to the airport for an urgent meeting with the company sponsoring her event. Event. That's what she called her 3-night getaway with another man. I dressed calmly. I picked up my backpack. I walked to the taxi as if I were heading to my own execution. At the airport, I saw her from a distance. She was in his arms. It wasn't a fleeting gesture. It was one of those hugs where bodies fit together because they already know each other, where there is no shame, only habit. She didn't look back. He kissed her on the forehead and said something I couldn't hear. They laughed. They held hands. When they called for boarding, they walked up together. I waited. I was one of the last to get on. I walked down the aisle of the plane with my heart pumping rage in every beat. She was already seated. I saw him in profile. Manuel. He was in 7C, the aisle seat. I stopped in front of them. Clara looked up. It took her a second to recognize me, a second that shattered her face. I sat down in 7B. I said nothing. Neither did she. The plane took off in complete silence. The journey had just begun. The plane climbed into the sky as if nothing was wrong, as if it weren't carrying three people who should not be together, trapped in a row far too narrow for so much contained resentment. I stared at the back of the seat in front of me, rigid, not a word, not a sigh. Clara, to my left, was still stiff, her hands on her lap, like a child caught in the wrong seat. Manuel, on her other side, leaned toward her and tried to speak in a low voice. "Are you okay?" he murmured. I heard him clearly. She didn't answer. She just stared ahead, her eyes glassy, as if her mind wanted to escape through the window. A flight attendant came by offering drinks. She asked me to calm down when I told her I wanted whiskey. "Sir, we've only just taken off." I asked for water, cold. I needed something to hold in my hands that wasn't her neck. I felt my fingernails digging into my own leg. A useless way to keep from screaming, not from rage, but from humiliation. Clara still said nothing. Manuel shifted uncomfortably, trying to hide his nervousness. I saw him pull out his phone, type something, and then put it away without sending it. The idiot didn't know whether to speak, stay quiet, or apologize. Any move he made exposed him as the intruder he was. What he didn't understand, because he was a coward, was that the real stranger here was me. I was the one who didn't belong in this row of three. Mid-flight, a storm began to form. Not outside, but inside the cabin. I'm not talking about turbulence, but about the gestures, the tremors, the shallow breaths. Clara started shaking her leg with a nervous tick I knew all too well. She did it whenever she was hiding something. She did it when she lost her job and didn't tell me for a week. She did it when I asked her if she was still talking to her ex. And she was doing it now, right here, with her lover sitting on her other side. Her hands were so tense her knuckles were white. She turned her head toward me. It took her a long time, but she did it. She looked at me, or rather she scanned me, as if she were searching my face for something. Forgiveness, understanding, fury, but she found nothing. I was empty. "Why are you doing this?" she whispered, her voice cracking. The question hit me like a slap. Why am I doing this? I turned my head slowly toward her. I looked at her with a coldness that needed no insults. I answered without moving a muscle in my face. "So you can't say I wasn't present for our ending." She turned her head back to the front. She didn't cry. She didn't make a scene. She just let the tears roll down her cheeks. She wiped them away quickly with the sleeve of her sweater. Manuel tried to reach a hand over to comfort her, but she pulled away. Not violently, but with a sense of exhaustion. I couldn't tell if she was more afraid of me or ashamed of herself. The flight continued. The silence became a shared torture. Every so often, someone would laugh a few rows back, or a baby would cry, or a woman would ask for a blanket. And the three of us were an emotional bomb, compressed into row 7. No one needed to speak. Our body language was screaming. Every breath was an accusation. Every averted gaze, a confirmation. We were flying into hell, and every mile was a countdown to something none of us knew how to finish. The plane wasn't shaking, but inside, we had already crashed. The meal service arrived like a mockery. That bland tray with lukewarm chicken, rubbery bread, and a dessert packaged as if sweetness could disguise the rot. Clara didn't touch a thing. She didn't even peel the plastic off the container. Manuel, like a caged animal, stared at his, unable to decide whether to eat or pretend to be asleep. I, on the other hand, ate everything, not because I was hungry, but to maintain my composure, to fill the space with something other than my thoughts. Every chew was an act of control. She watched me from the corner of her eye. It wasn't curiosity. It was a mixture of terror and shame, as if she couldn't understand why I hadn't gotten up, why I hadn't made a scene, why I hadn't exposed her. And that's what was hurting her the most, that I was doing nothing, that the torture was so silent. Halfway through the service, she leaned toward me, very low, her voice barely audible. She said, "I didn't want it to be like this." I put down my cutlery without looking at her. Like what? With me beside you, or with him as your only audience? She closed her eyes. She swallowed hard. I could feel her throat tighten at my response. I didn't answer with rage, just with precision. The damage didn't need volume, only direction. Manuel, who wasn't a complete fool, noticed the exchange. He got up from his seat, using the excuse of going to the bathroom. He didn't come back for half an hour. He wanted distance. Clara seized the moment. "It's not what you think," she began, but she stopped, because she saw that I no longer believed in anything. And when you stop believing, there's nothing left to save. The conversation sank into the void. Neither of us spoke for long minutes. We just breathed the same air, contaminated by an unresolved betrayal. The passengers around us went on with their lives, oblivious to the emotional minefield in row 7. One was reading a romance novel. Another, a teenager, was playing a game on his phone. 2 seats ahead, an elderly couple slept, holding hands. That image cut through me like a knife. At what point had Clara and I become this? In what exact second did this woman who used to say I was her home decide to pack her bags and move into another man's body? The flight attendant returned. She asked if she could take our trays. Clara forced a smile, as if trying to pretend everything was fine. She said yes, thank you very much. I said nothing. The woman took the trays and left. The eye contact between Clara and me became unbearable. Then she did it. She touched my hand, barely a graze, a clumsy attempt at connection. I pulled it away, not harshly, but with finality. "Don't touch me. You don't have the right." She stared at me. It was the first time I saw her truly broken, not by the fear of being caught, but by the certainty that she had lost me completely. Not because I was leaving, but because she had no way of coming back. In the distance, the captain announced light turbulence. They asked everyone to fasten their seatbelts. Ironic. Just as everything was starting to tremble within us, the plane decided to join in. Manuel returned. He glanced at us. She whispered something in his ear, but he just nodded. The flight continued. 2 hours left to go. But hell had already settled in, row by row, word by unspoken word. And the air we shared was growing denser. The plane moved on, and every mile sank us deeper. The atmosphere in that row was unbreathable. Clara no longer tried to speak. She simply existed, her gaze lost, as if she wished the plane would break in two and end everything without her having to face what she'd done. Manuel, to her right, pretended to read a magazine he had grabbed at random from the seat pocket. He wasn't turning the pages, just holding it, as if hiding behind the paper could protect him from the shame. I remained still, but every minute was an electric shock coursing through my body. I didn't need to scream or cry. We were already living the punishment. All of us, each one trapped in their own guilt. The cabin lights dimmed, simulating a false sense of tranquility. The sky outside was clear, but the silence between us was still charged with a quiet violence. I put on my headphones, without music, just to pretend I was tuning out. Clara took the opportunity, typed something on her phone, and slid the screen toward me. "I'm sorry. I never planned to hurt you." I read the sentence. It meant nothing to me. It had no weight. It was the kind of apology you offer when you don't know how to face the consequences. I turned my face to her and handed the phone back without typing a reply. Her cowardice hurt more than her betrayal. Time seemed to stand still. Every so often, someone would walk down the aisle and look at us as if we were a strange family. No one suspected that this row contained an unfaithful wife, her lover, and a husband who had decided to witness the end without looking away. I wondered what would happen if someone knew. If a flight attendant would approach and say, "Sir, we understand what's happening. You can change your seat." But no one came. No one interfered. And in that absence, there was also a brutal truth. In personal tragedies, the world doesn't stop. It goes on, with the same indifference as a plane cutting through the sky. When? It was Clara. An hour to go. She turned slowly toward me. This time, she looked at me the way she used to when she still loved me. Or at least, that's what she tried to imitate. Her voice was barely a whisper. "I swear, I was going to end it." I closed my eyes. I took a deep breath. The answer had been ready for hours. "You already ended it. I just didn't know." She covered her mouth with her hand as if my words had struck her. But she didn't cry. She couldn't. Tears don't come when the soul is that dry. Manuel touched her shoulder, trying to calm her. She ignored him. For the first time since I saw him, I felt that he regretted it too. Not sleeping with my wife, but getting involved in something he could no longer control. The captain spoke again. Imminent descent. He asked us to straighten our seats and fasten our seatbelts. We were preparing to land, but I didn't feel the end was near. Not yet. Clara returned to her initial posture, hands clenched on her lap. Her lips were trembling. Manuel stared out the window like a child trying to disappear from a classroom. And I took a deep breath and lowered my head. Not from exhaustion, but because I now knew that the worst part wasn't discovering a betrayal. The worst part was sharing a space with it, unable to turn back time. The real torture isn't the pain, but the helplessness of being unable to stop it. The plane landed smoothly, but none of us moved at first, as if our bodies knew that what came next would be harder than the 6 hours we'd spent trapped in that metal tube. The other passengers rushed to grab their bags, check their phones, stretch after the flight. We, however, remained still. Row 7 was a frozen tableau of guilt, cowardice, and dignity held together by sheer rage. I stood up first, slowly, as if each movement were part of a ritual only I understood. I took my backpack. I didn't look at either of them, not at her, not at him. I let the silence press down on them, heavy and suffocating. I walked calmly toward the exit, feeling how the air in the terminal was lighter than the recycled air I had been breathing on the flight. Clara and Manuel followed. I could hear them without needing to look back. Him, murmuring something she wouldn't answer. Her, trailing behind like a scolded dog. We went through immigration, collected our bags. She tried to catch up to me, but I quickened my pace, just enough to discourage her from speaking to me in front of everyone. I didn't want the sound of her voice to contaminate this moment. Not yet. Outside, the humid Caribbean heat hit us like a physical blow. Ironic, really. A vacation spot for a marriage that no longer existed. She approached me then, not with fear this time, but with a shattered expression. Please, she said, just please. 2 words, as if a simple plea could wash away what she had done. I stopped and looked at her, straight on, not with hatred, but with no compassion either. I didn't come here to get you back, I said. I came to make you see that I know exactly who you are. That sentence broke her. It wasn't the volume. I spoke quietly, firmly, but the meaning behind it. There was no room for interpretation. This wasn't a scene. It was an emotional execution. A few feet away, Manuel stared at the ground. A coward, right to the very end. The kind of man who sleeps with another's wife but can't find the courage to meet the eyes of the husband who found him out. I made one last thing clear. I handed her a folded piece of paper. It was a hotel reservation. My hotel. A different one from theirs. Don't worry, I'm not following you, I told her. You have your destination, and I have mine. But I want you to remember this. I didn't travel with you. I traveled next to the woman who stopped loving me and never bothered to tell me. She just stared at the paper, unsure whether to read it or rip it to pieces. And in that moment, I knew it was over. There was no reason to stay any longer. I didn't need to scream at her in a hotel lobby or hurl insults at her lover. I had already crushed them with the one truth they could never erase. I saw them standing there together, and I let them be. Not out of nobility, out of disgust. I turned and walked toward the airport exit. Behind me, I left the averted gazes, the lukewarm tears, the hushed whispers. Clara and Manuel didn't follow. They didn't try to stop me, because there was nothing left to say. The flight hadn't been a journey. It had been an exhibition. A gallery of shared misery between 3 strangers who had spent years pretending to be something they were not. And now, finally, we were each going our own way. She, with her lover, I, with the truth. A truth that no longer hurt. It was just heavy. But weight is something you can carry. A lie, on the other hand, is something that stays with you. And she was taking all of it with her.